Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope and at times humour. One of the most difficult things when you're going through grief can be just taking care of yourself, and often when you're feeling like you're just treading water and trying to get through every day in one piece, we can forget how important self-care is as part of the healing process. Helen Walsh is a life and health coach who specialises in self-care and starting over, is the host of Minding Your Own Self podcast and author of The Coach, Finding a New Kind of Normal. Helen, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
A new kind of normal. What is that?
Well, I wrote that during COVID because people were really struggling to find where do they fit in. And no more than I didn't know where anyone fit in either, but I do know that going back to basics, it goes back to sort of military training with people nearly, where, you know, simple thing like get up and make your bed, that sort of sets your pace for the day, and it really helps your mental health, because when you tick the boxes on a couple of small things, you have an inner sort of feeling of self-achievement nearly. So like your day has a bit of purpose to it. And also it's really surprising the momentum. So you get up and you make the bed, and then all of a sudden you're cleaning the kitchen sink, and then all of a sudden you think, I'll go for a walk, and then I'll go. So it's sort of
so it's also needs to be to get, if you're going through grief, to try and reach that new kind of normal, you sort of have to train yourself into habits or a routine.
Well, I think you have to first and foremost listen to what you need yourself, and really listen to yourself and allow yourself whatever you need for a period of time. The problem with people that I've worked with over the years grieving is that they might have, let's say, something go on too long. So take to the bed if you need to take to the bed with the Ben and Jerry's or whatever you need. And you'll have days where you can't get out of bed, and that's completely normal grieving process. And if we don't allow ourselves to go through that grieving process, it catches up on us anyway. But the thing is to say, right, okay, I'm allowing myself now 2 or 3 days of this, and then I'm up. And you make yourself get up and do something, and you promise yourself that you'll do something. And the promise to yourself is the most important part, because that's the bit where you reconnect with who you are. And the grief falls into two major areas, really, as we both know. It falls into the missing that person. So you can't reach out to them, you can't have those chats, even though you might still have your chats with them, but there's not that two-way communication. So there's a huge loss of that person, and then there's the loss of what your future was with that person.
Of course, because that's something we don't really think about. We think more, I think, in the past and what we had, rather than going, we won't be able to do this.
Especially if you have a relationship with somebody, and like yourself, you've built a family with them or whatever. Your identity has now wrapped around that person. They're part of you in a huge way, but also part of your future. So you would have sat down and said, okay, when the boys are older, we're going to do this, or when the whatever. And so you have that future. And all of a sudden, that future's not there anymore. And you have to really step tiny bit at a time to find out, well, who am I without this person? Where am I going? Where am I? And that can be very overwhelming.
Because oftentimes as well, and I know we sort of, I guess, try and rebuild, but in a different way. So you might suddenly change your whole wardrobe and just start dressing differently, or doing different things, doing different hobbies, doing maybe even hanging out with different people. Is that all part of that process?
There's a major gap when someone leaves your life, and you will fill that gap one way or the other. Now, we don't generally give ourselves enough time for the gap to be filled with ourselves. That takes time, but we'll draw in different people to help us fill that gap for different needs. You will find that when somebody passes, you have people in your life step in that you didn't think they might have been on the outside slightly and not necessarily your best friends or whatever, but they step up and they're incredible for you and they know the right thing to say or the right place to go with you for a cup of tea or whatever. And so that you start to recreate this space, this gap that's left. And that can be, as I said, your identity changes. So you might say, okay, I actually feel like dressing different, or I feel like that's you trying to find yourself. You come out the other side stronger for having gone through the process of grief. But your life is, and let's not dress this up, is not going to be ever the same again. And you have to grieve that as well as the person.
So you're grieving your past life.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah,
and the end of that as well.
Yeah.
How though do you, because like this, for anybody listening that's maybe just on the start of this time in their lives, they're going, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, you know, you get up in the morning, you do your routine, you might change your way, you might do this. But it's easy to say it, but it's not always easy to do.
No, and you're in... when someone dies, particularly if it's shock death, you're in a bubble. You live in a bubble, and that can be for a year, it can be 2 years, it can be whatever, where you go through what you need to do to keep living. And that's it. You're in a survival mode and you're not in a living mode, and you're not ready to go into living mode. And so that's okay as well. That psychologically, that bubble keeps us safe. It keeps us from going to the extreme with how we feel about something. Because there'll be days where you think, I don't want to be here. I'm like, if they're not here, I don't want to be here. And it can be that raw for somebody. So the thing I would say, go gently. Just go gently. Just don't try to please everybody around you. If you have children, you have to show up for the children. But even in your state of grief, that should be, you know, this is how I am at the moment, right? I'm a bit of a wreck, but I'm here. I haven't gone. I'm here and I'm solid. And you know, the scary part, I think we spoke about this before, I think for children is particularly if a parent passes, that they're now going, oh, hang on a second, this could happen. So maybe this could now happen to mum, or this could now happen to dad, or this is, and there's a fear in them that they don't talk about, but it's in them, buried in them, where they think, oh no, we better watch this, or we better get, and it's awful because there is a fear then put in them.
But it is like that when somebody dies that's close to you, and then somebody gets it, even in yourself, you become a bit of sort of a hypochondriac, like, oh my goodness, you know, I've a pain in my head, there's something wrong with me. I mean, that's a natural thing to do.
That's a brilliant thing to bring up, because, you know, grief makes you sick. As it's going through your body, and as your body's dealing with the shock, you will get sick, you will get the sore throat, you will get the pain in your eye that you never had before, and you think, oh my God, is this a brain tumour? Is this like, you will go there. And that's just normal for what you've been through. You've been through shock, trauma, loss, pain. Like it's the most amount that a human can take.
Yeah.
And there's various different types. Like I had 3 very good friends, one of them I went out with for a couple of years, pass in a car accident when I was 19. And like 3 of our group
were suddenly gone. Yeah.
And I went into this bubble. I just went yes to everything. I went yes to the parties, yes to the travel, yes to, and you manage whatever way you need to.
Yeah,
and then
it's sort of an escapism though as well.
And then my parents died from illnesses, and so with them I did about 2-month period with my mum, and I had years with my dad of him deteriorating over a period of time. But then he died in a very shocking way at the end of the day in the hospital. So you don't know till you're in the situation what's going to feel like, what you need. I 100% would say make sure you go into a counsellor or you're talking to somebody. But it's not the right time for the first couple of months. You're not ready for that.
Can you
process.
leave it too late? Because there's a lot of people that don't, I mean, like if you've kids and they're young kids and you're trying to help them, you know, understand what's happened, or they're going to counselling.
I would say the 6-month period you need to be dipping into something.
You see, I also think as well, though, then afterwards, and what always put me off was that afterwards you'd sort of go, okay, I need to sort of, think about this and just have an hour, and you don't always get that hour if you're coming home to the kids or whatever. Yeah. And that can be off-putting.
Yeah, and that's really important factor because, as I say, counselling isn't an hour, it's 2 hours. You're right, you need that hour to process. You need to be able to go down to the beach and walk, cry, get angry, feel what you feel. And sometimes even when you've had a counselling session, you might be sitting on the sofa that night and something hits you.
Yeah.
There could be a trigger or something that hits you and you get upset. The difficult thing is that we feel guilty if we get upset in front of children or whatever, but it's them seeing, again, the most normal thing. I remember my first sort of experience of any sort of death was coming home as a little girl, and my mum was standing over the kitchen table peeling potatoes and bawling, crying, and the tears were going into the potatoes. I was like, Mum, like, you'll have to wash them, and no concept that there's something really wrong here. Like, I just thought she was having a bad day. And she just said, oh, my brother died. And it was that cut off just conversation, and that was the only time we spoke about it. So people, particularly years ago, wouldn't have indulged, as they would have called it, in saying how you feel. But we're much better at that now. And we can say to our mates, you know what, I'm having a crap day. I think I'll give that a miss tonight. Do you mind? And they don't mind. They will bend with whatever you need. And I think people are fantastic now at that. You know, they're much better. And if anyone gets you annoyed because you can't turn up and do something, then see you. Bye.
Adios. It's interesting what you're saying about the health thing and how it does affect your health. And then suddenly you get all these little ailments afterwards that weren't there before. There's also the nervous system gets very badly damaged. How does that work?
See, we talk about our physical bodies all the time, and we talk about our brains. And to be honest with you, even that we disconnect. So we're either dealing with head stuff or we're dealing with body stuff. We very generally or don't put the two together that often. And it's all connected. But nobody talks about the nervous system. For every trauma you've had in your life, be it that you fell off your bike as a little girl, be it that you had a row with somebody that you know, in your teens that stayed in your head, be it layers of trauma. And then this big, huge trauma comes along and knocks the nervous system for 6. The nervous system, in my experience and in my research, responds to comfort, to gentle, to restorative. So it's that, it could be something as simple as literally rocking yourself a little bit. That somatic type movement that heals the nervous system. I found some of the ASMR stuff good. So ASMR is audio meridian response, sensory response. So it's basically like you know, as a little girl, if someone brushed your hair, you'd get that sort of tingly sensation. That's a really fast way of helping your nervous system. So some stuff you have to look around and feel around for what feels right. It's such an individual process.
Can it make you erratic?
Yeah, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
You know, as I said, as long as you don't stay in a state for too long. And we're talking about, like, there's no rule of thumb here. The only rule of thumb, as I said, is I would say go and talk to somebody after 6 months, and that might be one session. That mightn't be let's throw myself into therapy and dig up my past and all the rest, because that mightn't be what you need. A cognitive behavioural therapist, CBT, will give you a set of tools for dealing with the anxiety that you feel and whatever. And that might be a better option than going and doing all the cognitive stuff with somebody else. So you need to go, when I feel panicked, I do the box breath. And the box breath is one of the simplest tools, but it will regulate your vagus nerve, which is the centre of your nervous system and your brain, and it will calm everything in your body within seconds, because you can feel like you're having a heart attack. You literally can feel that tightness in your chest when you're in that grief and that pain. So the box breath is really simple. It's like if you imagine a box in front of you. You breathe in You can count for 3 or 4 depending on how you feel about it. But let's say you breathe in for 4, hold. So you're going up the other side of the box. Breathe out at the top of the box. Hold on the out. Come down the other side of the box. So breathe in. Hold. Out. Hold that empty. You will just, your whole body just comes down.
So it's a simple thing.
Yeah. So that's where a cognitive therapist could really help you, and particularly if you're dealing with children as well, because they'll give you tools that you can use. And say if one of your children is in a state or, having a really bad day or whatever, they will teach you, look, do something different with the child. Let's say, you know what, we're going to have a carpet party tonight in a film, but it's not that you're sitting in the same place on the sofa that you all sat together. You're breaking the link, but you're still spending time and doing something lovely with them. So it's creating new habits around their new environment, but not too fast.
Yeah, so little by little.
Yeah.
And is that something, just staying on the subject of kids and grief, and you were saying like 6 months, whatever, if a child isn't ready for therapy, perhaps they're too young, and then 7 years later they're receptive to it, is that too late?
No, absolutely not. Children have a different way of grieving than we do. They've blockers, so they're great at the blocking. So, okay, that feels a bit too painful, so I'm going out to play football. That feels a bit too painful, I'm going to stick on my earphones and blare my music or whatever. And they sort of regulate much better than we do. We're more raw when it comes to our nervous system and grief. They're better at monitoring themselves. Where the issue is if you see that something has come out of this that wasn't there before. So that the child is playing up or their behaviour's off the rails, or they've gone into themselves. They're just being way too quiet and not expressing themselves or telling you things. Normal teenage stuff, by the way, as well.
Oh, I know.
One of the things I teach in my classes, go home and talk to your mum and dad.
Yeah.
But it's that, looking for those red flags, what is. And again, it's difficult. Like, I'll use the example of your boys, if that's okay, in that their ages. They're going into that teenage stage anyway. And so how do you know what is...
it's grief? Compartmentalising.
Yeah, and how do you know is what's them just being a stroppy teenager? Yeah. But they do tend to get to a point where they will keep it in, and then it'll come out. And what I found out about teenage boys, I've just finished my 25th year in Belvedere last week, teaching transition year, and what I've learned about them is they do talk to one another. That's changed over the generations. Whereas people used to really bottle stuff up. Now you get the odd child who will, but for the most part, I hear the most profound conversations in the schoolyard between two teenagers. Like I can't speak for ages after sometimes, because I'm like, I can't get over that they have this freedom with one another, and they will have those conversations and say, I feel crap today, and it's just,
they're more open.
Things are tough at home, or mum's on a mad one, or whatever, but they process it with their friends.
Yeah. What about acceptance and this whole idea of the new normal? And do you have to, they say like acceptance is the last stage of grief, and you have to reach acceptance before you're really, but how do you know if you're there, and how do you know if you're ready?
Acceptance is, to me, the reality that this person's not coming back.
Yeah.
And for me, in every case of the grief, and I've had a miscarriage, I've had, teenagers, as I said, but dying and stuff. But for everyone, it was different. So there was a moment, I think, somewhere along the path of that grief where I went, they're never coming back. So now my life has to go on without them. And that's a really painful moment, but then it sort of shifts something in you and allows you to go on to the next chapter or the next stage with things. There's no time on that, I think.
But do you think you have to have that before you can start to rebuild?
No.
You can start to rebuild in that.
Acceptance could be 20 years from now.
Yeah. Or it may never come.
It might not come, yeah. Yeah, I found it really hard to accept that the 3 lads were gone and we were never going to see them again. These people who were full of life and their whole future ahead of them. Like, and I thought, how could that be that that's wiped out now and that I never, when somebody's older or when someone's sick, it's still difficult, but it's a different kind of grieving. Like, I had 2 months with my mum. I got to do everything I wanted with her. Ran up a few credit card bills in the process, but we got to do, and I got to,
so there's no
to
regrets.
have that run into to it, and it was different. But the shock grief, like, it's just, I don't know, it hits you in waves, and grief is waves.
Yeah.
You get up and you might think, I'm doing fantastic, and you get in your car and you're actually going, Jesus, I'm having a good day, and then a song comes on. Goosed. The music will wreck your head because there's a memory linked to it, and it's so strong cognitively for you. Your whole body will respond, and even if you're trying not to respond, your nervous system will respond. So it's feeling that.
How do you know if it's your nervous system responding?
Because
I
you
mean,
feel
how
it in every
just in
cell in your
anxiety,
body,
or will it come out
no,
as?
Sometimes you can have that you can feel cold. It's as simple as that. You can feel really chilly and you want to comfort yourself by putting a cardigan on or something to keep you warm. You can feel agitated when it's in your nervous system as well. So you might think, Jesus, I really need to get out for that run or that walk, or I need to go to the gym and knock 7 bells out of the machines. You might be to the thing where it feels so overwhelming. You think, I'm going to have a glass of wine now because I'm like, and that could be 3 o'clock in the day. I'm not advocating that one, but I'm just saying, look, sometimes you just have to do what's.
Yeah. And is that where the self-care comes in?
Yeah. So you don't let something that is going to have a negative impact on your own health carry on for long periods of time. You do whatever you need short term, but if it's something that's longer term. So, for example, even down to medication, I would say, there's a lot of people find it really, really difficult to cope, and they take an antidepressant. And what an antidepressant will do is it just takes the raw edge off. And I would totally recommend it for people if they're going through real extreme pain and real extreme grief, because you have to be able to still function. You have to still go to work, provide for yourself. If you have a family, provide for the family. And so I think there's no harm in that. The thing is to look at it again, maybe in a year's time, and say, do I really need this now? Am I still in that raw state? Or have I put in some building blocks in my life now that even if I feel pain, I know how to deal with my pain. So I know going for a run, or I know sitting down and having a nice coffee with a bit of headspace will do it for me. And it's finding those little blocks of you space that helps. But there's a lot of people who can go down the road of medication and then they don't feel the medication's doing anything for them after a year or two. So they go up a notch and then they go up, and then all of a sudden you're into a different thing.
Yeah, or some people just take the other extreme where they get, I'm thinking of myself here, and another friend is where you go completely the other way and you just go mad into exercise and doing stuff and being
Exercise is the single best way you could ever handle grief. Single best way. Now you can still do that to the extreme, but you're getting a dopamine hit. So you're feeding your brain. You're going to lift every chemical in your body. So that's and physically take that tension out of the cells at the same time. So you're actually allowing your body to let go of the pain. It doesn't mean that the pain's gone. It just means in that moment where it's built so intensely that you have a way of releasing that and letting it go, and you feel better then. So I think, that is the best possible way to deal with it.
You were talking about your friends that you lost when they were teenagers, and, we sort of think when somebody dies about, obviously I lost Martin as an adult. My kids lost him at sort of 12, 7, 5. So it's all different sort of ways of how they all, I suppose, processed it. How is it, like when you get to being a teenager and you lose your friends. How how does that manifest itself? Because that is something when you're in your prime, and I'm actually thinking of somebody at the moment that
So
in our community
we had talked to them before.
Yeah.
The night they were getting in the car, they were going to Wexford, and the car was hit by a bus, and they died instantly. The what goes on afterwards, I remember the thing that upset me the most was hearing the rumours.
that it had happened.
Yeah, so people saying, oh, they were joyriding, or oh, they were doing this, or oh, they were doing that. And I was like, how disgusting that was. Because I remember feeling so sick in the church at the funeral coming out, and these two elderly women outside, and they were saying disgusting things about, and I didn't even have the energy to say, how dare you, or how whatever. And I always regret that little moment that I didn't stand up for them a bit more. I was in so much pain, so much grief. And then I took myself out to the end of, I lived in London Bridge Drive at the time, and I took myself out to the end of the road every evening looking for them. I thought, oh my God, they're after doing something now. They got into a bit of mischief because they were all messers and great fun. And I thought they're going to do something, and they're coming back. They're hidden or whatever, because I didn't see any bodies. I just saw coffins. And so the process of seeing somebody that's passed, as horrible as it is, and you'll never take it back out of your head, is a sort of important part of acknowledging that they are gone. So I spent nearly a year doing that. And then I remember just having a moment going, no, he's not coming back. He's not coming back. And the guys are not coming back. And just really great friends, you know. So you've not got one friend wiped out, you have 3 friends wiped out. And that changes every dynamic, because then the group doesn't even want to meet up because now
it's
there's
too
a
painful.
chunk of this group missing. And so now you go out and you form other friendships and other whatever. And then I went into a complete extreme of telling people how I felt about them.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I'd be mad about someone after 3 weeks and I'd be telling them, oh, I'm mad about you or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was the censor for that went out the window, because I'm like, look, they could die. I could die.
So tell them now.
We could die.
Yeah.
So let's tell people how we feel.
But is it like a very young person? Because you were how old?
19.
You're only starting your life. You're just on your leaving or whatever, and you're moving forward. How do you think that changed the course of the rest of your life? How impactful was it?
I don't think I probably ever let anybody in relationship-wise since then, really.
Wow.
You know, I've gone out with people, I've been in love with people, and I've whatever, but there's always been a line in the sand where I don't cross it or I don't go any further. And I think that was just because I think Joe was my first love, and, you know, I trusted him 100%. He made me feel so amazing and so special when I was going out with him. And just, he worked as a commie chef in the Berkeley Court, and he used to come home with pockets full of chocolates in one hand and a fillet steak in the other. My mother loved him. Of course she did.
Yeah.
And so things like that. So, but the one thing that I will say to anyone, particularly going through, the moments you have with that person never go. In fact, for me, they got clearer. So I have a recall. I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember him getting down on his knees proposing to me for my 18th birthday. I remember the cake he made me with 4 chefs that took them for them to take it up to Crow's Pub in Ballsbridge. Like, the detail of the time with that person becomes more precious, I suppose.
Wow. And then moving on your mum and your dad.
I think I didn't get a chance to probably come up for air for a long time, because he died, and then Mum died when I was 22.
So very close.
So it was very short. And then, so she died in the February, and then a friend of mine was killed in a car accident in the May, a female, Susan. And we were really good training buddies, because I was working in the gym business at the time, and she had just spent years and years and years becoming a solicitor, only to realise she really wanted to be an air hostess. And we were celebrating that. Yeah. And she was literally, again, hit by a truck. She was on her phone. coming back from a job she'd been sent on. And just, again, that sort of, here we go again. That impact.
It's going through the motions.
Yeah.
How did you practice self-care then on yourself?
I didn't. I was too young to really get that. And I didn't have any real guidance around it. So I would have drank, I would have partied, danced, travelled. Like if someone said, I'm going to Spain, I'm like, I'm coming with you. You know, I disappeared at times and people would hear from me 2 or 3 days later going, by the way, I'm over in Portugal or I'm over in whatever. And I was gone. Like I had this urgent need to want to live. And I thought, whatever that is,
I'm doing it.
I'm having it.
Yeah.
You know, I could have probably very easily gone down the drugs route at that time because there was a lot of that around and it would have been a very easy hit for me. But I was someone who couldn't even inhale a cigarette. So I thought, right, I'm probably not going to be any good at that.
Yeah.
So like that, I'll stick to the exercise.
Yeah.
And as we talked about before, the 1980s aerobics and the music and the gym and the whatever, that kept me alive and kept me sane because I had a safe place to go back to where I knew what to do and how to do it. And I could tap into the whole atmosphere of that and switch off till I came out the door again. Yeah, it takes lumps out of your life. It definitely does. And then, let's say even in your 20s, you meet other people and whatever, because, and thank God they haven't, but because they haven't gone through the pain you have and the grief you have, they're evolved in a different level. So they don't understand when you react to something or you whatever. So it's hard to meet somebody then.
Yeah.
I went for all the mad people that were going to give loads of noise in my life and not give me the stability I needed.
Yeah.
But they'd give me the distraction. So
Yeah.
I'd say yes to that.
Yeah. Because the distraction is sort of what, in whatever form,
It's a noise.
is what
it
you
fills
look for.
that space, as we talked about earlier. And I think, as I said, you do it different. Like I've seen you. I see you run up the road, and I just think, fair play to her. She looks amazing, and you're flying. You know, you're not pacing yourself. There's an energy in you, and I think that's the best possible way.
Yeah. I mean, they do say it's escapism, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but it's a healthy. It's going to keep you healthy as long as you're not,
Maybe not so
wear and
much
tear
your
in the
knees.
knees.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even that, all the stem cell stuff is coming down the line. You'll be fine. The knees will
Yeah,
get
yeah,
fixed.
yeah.
You know, in the
Grand.
grand scheme of I prefer my knees to go than my head.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard, I think. That's the biggest thing, is not to let the head wander in a lot of ways, because there is the whole thing as well. We talked about the the nervous system, and that often you become a bit of a hypochondriac that you maybe weren't
Also,
before.
Even worse,
But-
you can also have moments of feeling like you're going mad.
Yeah.
That you have no control over what's
Yeah.
going on in your head. And the thing to remember to say to yourself in that moment, this too will pass. And I know it's very cliche and it's overused sometimes, but it's so true. Nothing stays the same. Nothing will ever stay the same. Your state will not stay the same. And if you get that bad where you need to change state, so let's say you wake up and you're, oh my God, I feel like I'm going a bit crazy. Get into a cold shower and shock the living daylights out of yourself, or the sea. Or as I said, go for that run or go for that. Change your state physically and it will take the pressure down.
Because there is the whole thing about, I notice, like, you lose sometimes your train of thought. You can be having a conversation and you could just go, oh, what was I saying? Or where am I going? Or have that brain fog. Like, I used to be really good at, I'd always know somebody's name or when I met them. But I meet people and I go, hi, this is, and introduce the person I'm with, so that they go, hi, I'm so-and-so. And that seems to be quite a common thing.
I think that's a
Maybe it's an age thing. But
could
it
be a
does
male thing
seem
as well.
to affect
Yeah.
the brain hugely
Absolutely.
in that regard.
So what happens with brain fog is that the neurotransmitters in part of the brain shut down a little bit. They usually do it when they're protecting you. or whatever. You can also get it from hormones and other things or other reasons. But again, it's a layer of sort of protection. So even though it's really annoying and you're sitting there going, what is the person's name, or what the fuck is the code, or what, or whatever, you
Did I close the back door?
Yeah. If you step away from it even for a minute, go and have a cup of coffee or something and come back, you'll remember. It's there. So the thing to not panic about, it's not gone anywhere. It's just those neurotransmitters aren't going in and picking up that information right now. That's all. Because they need to mind you. They're minding some other part of your brain.
You've been recognised for all your work with Pass It On and Operation Snowball and all the work you do to help other people. How much of that was inspired by your losses?
I think more so the loss of children. I created my own baby, if you like, and my baby was just something that started off. To be honest, I remember being sick one day, it was again about 25 years ago, and Oprah Winfrey was on the telly, and there was all these children, and the children were collecting things and then giving them where they were needed. And I thought, oh my God, what a great concept. This actually is a great concept. This is not about asking people for money or to whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. We rely on that very heavily, particularly in Ireland, for our charities and to keep our services going. But this was something that I thought, it doesn't have to get complicated. So let's do this or whatever. And I remember the first time I put out feelers and said, can we get coats and towels and whatever? I'm going to send them over. There's a convoy going over to Kosovo. And let's get that ready and let's whatever. And I was living in a cottage in Shankill, and we had to take over the whole potato sheds. We sent 6 convoys over. The army had to come and pack the stuff. There was so much stuff came, and I thought, okay, this works because you're asking somebody for something that necessarily doesn't give them a loss.
Yeah.
They might have something at home and go, oh yeah, I'll get rid of that jumper, or I'll get rid of that blanket, you've contributed yourself to stuff that you're getting rid of. So it's no longer use to you, but it was huge use to everyone. Like at the moment we're doing collections of crutches and we send them over to Ukraine.
Oh, I have a pair.
Yeah. I mean, and most people haven't think. But it just goes to show you, like, if you take that from your press where it's not being used and give it to somebody who really needs it, there's a power in that. So I think it just sort of grew. And then I loved the fun bit of calling things different names. So that's where Operation Snowball and Love Blast and all came from. I like the name and then creating the concept around it because it needs to be dressed up in fun as well for people. I think I want them to enjoy the process of giving and have something that feels good. And now, like, Operation Snowball is now something that I couldn't stop even if I wanted, because the families are waiting on it every year and they're like, no, we have the grandkids and all now have their jumpers and they're coming down and I'm like, okay. So I don't know. I don't feel there's any pressure with it, but I do feel that it's something that I has to just keep going or whatever, So.
And that's your focus, because often when people have lost people, the next step is you set something up or a foundation and try and help people through that.
I did that with the Cancer Society. I did that with and I'm going to be really honest here. Like, I raised a lot of money through aerobics marathons and stuff for cancer after Mum passed. I really felt a need to want to do something, but I wasn't really unhappy with how the money was being used. I didn't like how much of it went to admin. I didn't like whatever. So, I mean, I even made an agreement with this one particular cancer charity, and I said, okay, so I think this hospital needs a children's section. So I'm going to raise the money, and then I'm going to go out and buy the paint and buy the children's things and buy the whatever and pay the people to come in and do it. And then we're going receipt for receipt down to the last penny of where this money's going. None of it's going to admin. And if you're happy with that, then I'm on board. Yeah. But if you're not, that's... Because I remember that this chap who was running the charity brought me out for, I think he's passed now, brought me out for dinner to discuss one of the projects that we were working on. And we went to a very expensive restaurant in Donnybrook, and I went, by the way...
Yeah.
Where's the money for this coming from, if you don't mind me asking? And he said, oh, we have a petty cash fund, or we have... And I went, no. This is not... See the fancy Christmas cards? No.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's...
most of them are done by email now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
But at the time, there was these real expensive luxury. And one particular year, they sent 2 cards. So that meant there was 2 of everyone on the list. So that was an expense. So I'm very protective if somebody gives me money or gives me something, that it goes to the right place and it's used in the right place. I'm like a bulldog in that part of my life, not in any other part, but in that part.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you lose somebody and then you decide you're going to do something in their name, and I think that's why, even though it's hard to set up a charity now, you can affiliate yourself to a charity and you make an agreement with them where the money goes and what you do, because there is a sense of making the person's passing worthwhile when you do that.
But it was also really strange because my mum was Helen Murray, and she married my dad, so Helen Walsh. So the same name as me. So all through the funeral, it was Helen Walsh, and on the gravestone is Helen Walsh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah, apparently that's quite a weird thing to see, because my
wanted to change
brother
my
is John
name.
and my granddad is John. So
Yeah.
whenever he sees his gravestone, sort of like, he finds that a bit...
Yeah, I did. I wanted to change my name.
a bit odd. Helen, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about all the ways we can, I suppose, try and help ourselves or maybe help somebody else when they're going through those
just go gentle
initial stages.
And to anyone who's trying to help somebody, don't push.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is listen. So if they say, I'm grumpy today or I'm whatever, say, great, that's great.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? That's the only line you need to, how can I help? And if they say, I don't need anything, then that's what they mean at that moment in time. And I know it's worrying because you can see people go into awful states and you're in their circle and you want to jump in and you want to help. And, you know, cooking the bit of dinner and handing it, I'm sure you had people do that for you or whatever, you know, or saying, you know what, Venetia, I'll pick up the boys on Friday for you and drop them home. And little things like that. That's where you can step in to help. Don't be overpowering and don't push.
Helen, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.